Dora Morgan just wanted to stay in the background, that was all. But when famous chef Regina Montgomery singled her out in front of everyone, mockingly handing her an apron, Dora felt all eyes turn toward her. "Show us what you can do," the renowned chef sneered. "Let's see if home cooking skills measure up." Little did they know this simple woman in plain clothes was about to turn their culinary world upside down. The prestigious Lakeside Culinary Institute bustled with energy as aspiring chefs and food enthusiasts gathered for the sold-out masterclass. Gleaming stainless steel workstations reflected the overhead lights while the scent of fresh herbs and simmering stock filled the air. Dora adjusted her simple white t-shirt, feeling out of place among the sea of professional chef coats and culinary students in their crisp uniforms. At 38, she'd mastered the art of blending into the background, her honey blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, minimal makeup, nothing that would draw attention. "You sure you don't want me to mention who you are?" whispered Brooke, her niece, excitement dancing in her eyes. At 22, Brooke was pursuing her culinary dreams with the same passion Dora once had. "Absolutely not," Dora replied firmly. "I'm just here to support you, this is your moment." Brooke squeezed her aunt's hand. "I still can't believe you got me into this workshop. It's impossible to get tickets." Dora smiled softly. "I called in an old favor, that's all." A hush fell over the crowd as the doors to the teaching kitchen swung open. Chef Regina Montgomery strode in, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, designer glasses perched on her nose, and a chef's coat emblazoned with the logo of her award-winning restaurant chain. At 65, she was culinary royalty, feared by kitchen staff, revered by critics, and known for her merciless approach to teaching. "Welcome," Regina announced, her voice carrying effortlessly through the space. "Today's masterclass will separate those with genuine potential from those merely playing at being chefs." As she spoke, her sharp eyes scanned the room, evaluating each face. When she spotted Dora in her casual clothes, a flicker of disdain crossed her features. "I see we have some enthusiastic home cooks joining us today," Regina remarked, her tone dripping with condescension. Nervous laughter rippled through the audience. Dora kept her expression neutral, though her stomach tightened. She knew that look, had seen it countless times in professional kitchens, the judgment, the immediate dismissal. "Now," Regina continued, clapping her hands together, "let's begin with the foundations of French cuisine. The mother sauces are the building blocks upon which culinary excellence is built." As Regina demonstrated the first technique, Dora whispered tips to Brooke, guiding her through the subtle details the chef was glossing over. "Actually," Dora murmured, "if she lowered the heat slightly, the sauce wouldn't break so easily." Unfortunately, her whisper wasn't quite quiet enough. Regina's head snapped up, her piercing gaze locking onto Dora like a heat-seeking missile. "Do we have an expert in our midst?" Regina's voice cut through the room like a freshly sharpened knife. The crowd turned. Dora felt the weight of dozens of eyes on her. She'd been spotted. Chef Regina's heels clicked sharply against the polished floor as she approached Dora, the sound echoing through the suddenly silent room, punctuating each step with unspoken authority. "You have something to add to my demonstration?" Regina asked, one perfectly manicured eyebrow arched in challenge. Dora shook her head slightly. "No, I was just helping my niece understand the technique." Regina's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Oh? And what expertise do you bring to this assistance?" Before Dora could answer, Regina glanced down at Dora's hands. Despite years away from professional kitchens, they still bore the telltale signs: slight burns, calluses, the nearly imperceptible nick scars that were the badges of a life spent with knives and heat. "Those are cook's hands," Regina observed, her voice sharper now. "Not just a hobbyist, are you?" Dora kept her expression neutral. "I've worked in kitchens before." A ripple of murmurs spread through the audience. Regina's smile tightened as she surveyed Dora's simple white t-shirt and jeans, a stark contrast to her own impeccable appearance. "Well then," Regina's voice carried across the room, "perhaps you'd like to come up here and demonstrate for us." Dora felt her niece tense beside her. "Aunt O, you don't have to." I'm really just here to observe, Dora replied calmly, though her heart hammered against her ribs. Regina's laugh was brittle. Isn't that convenient? Happy to critique but unwilling to perform. The challenge hung in the air. Some students shifted uncomfortably while others watched with the thinly veiled delight of witnessing potential drama. Dora recognized the trap. She'd seen Regina do this before on her cooking show, publicly humiliating amateur chefs who dared to question her methods. I insist, Regina said, no longer smiling. She gestured to an empty workstation. Show us what you know. A young assistant, catching Regina's signal, hurried forward with a spare apron. Dora remained seated, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. 10 years she'd been away from this world. 10 years building a quiet life where nobody scrutinized her every move, where food was about joy rather than judgment. Come now, Regina said, her voice honey-sweet with mock encouragement. Surely someone confident enough to correct my technique isn't afraid of a little demonstration. Dora felt the trap closing around her. Refuse and she'd be labeled a coward. Accept and she risked everything she'd built since leaving the spotlight. It's just a simple bechamel, Regina added, the challenge unmistakable. Surely a kitchen veteran can manage that. The assistant placed the apron on the table in front of Dora. The white fabric seemed to glow under the bright lights of the teaching kitchen. That's fine, Dora finally said, her voice quiet but steady. I'd be happy to demonstrate. As she stood, she heard whispers around her. Did she just volunteer to go against Chef Montgomery? Does she know who she's dealing with? This is going to be brutal. Dora tied the apron around her waist, muscle memory taking over as she formed the perfect bow at her back. She followed Regina to the front, aware of every eye tracking her movement. Your name? Regina asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. Dora. Morgan? Regina gestured expansively to the workstation. Well, Dora Morgan, show us how you would approach a proper bechamel and perhaps, she added with a tight smile, explain to everyone how your method improves upon the technique I've been perfecting for 40 years. The challenge was clear. This wasn't just about making a sauce. This was Regina publicly putting Dora in her place, establishing dominance in front of an audience who had paid handsomely to learn from a culinary legend, not an unknown woman in everyday clothes. Dora took a deep breath and stepped up to the stove. Standing at the gleaming professional workstation, Dora felt a rush of conflicting emotions. Her fingers hovered over the ingredients: butter, flour, milk, salt, nutmeg, arranged in perfect mise en place. So familiar, yet now framed by the weight of public scrutiny. Behind her, she could sense Regina's triumphant anticipation. The renowned chef expected fumbling, hesitation, proof of an amateur overstepping. The audience waited with bated breath for the spectacle. Whenever you're ready, Regina prompted, her voice carrying an edge sharp enough to fillet a fish. Unless you'd prefer to return to your seat. Dora gazed down at the stainless steel surface, catching her own reflection. The woman staring back was no longer the confident executive chef who had once commanded kitchens across 3 continents. Yet neither was she the failure Regina was attempting to expose. A memory surfaced, the last competition she'd entered before walking away from it all. The pressure, the cameras, the judges' exacting standards. She'd won that day, her 10th major championship, before disappearing from the culinary spotlight. Completely. The clock is ticking, Ms. Morgan, Regina announced, gesturing to the digital timer now displayed on the overhead screen. Professional kitchens wait for no one. Dora's hands finally moved, reaching for the butter with practiced precision. As her fingers wrapped around the cold block, something awakened within her. Muscle memory, yes, but something deeper. The joy that had first drawn her to cooking before accolades and expectations complicated everything. She placed a heavy-bottomed saucepan on the induction cooktop, adjusting the heat with instinctive accuracy. The butter began melting, releasing its nutty aroma into the air. You'll want to watch the temperature, Regina commented loudly to the audience. Too hot and the butter burns. Too cool and the roux won't develop properly. Dora didn't respond. She didn't need to. The melting butter hit exactly the right temperature, not sizzling wildly, not sluggishly pooling. Perfect. As she added the flour, her movements became fluid, confident. The wooden spoon moved in rhythmic circles, transforming the mixture into a smooth paste that released the distinct aroma of cooked flour without a hint of burning. From the corner of her eye, Dora noticed a slight shift in Regina's posture. The older chef had expected mistakes by now, not the precise, assured movements of a professional. Dora reached for the warm milk, and in that moment made her decision. She could follow Regina's standard recipe, producing a technically correct but uninspired sauce, or she could show what she was truly capable of. Taking a deep breath, Dora chose authenticity over anonymity. If she was going to do this, she would do it her way. Actually, she said, her voice clear and steady as she began slowly incorporating the milk, I prefer to infuse the dairy first. And with that simple statement, Dora Morgan stepped back into the light. The room fell silent as Dora added bay leaf and a sprig of thyme to the warming milk, along with the traditional onion studded with cloves. These classic French techniques were often skipped in demonstrations considered too time-consuming for modern kitchens. You're taking quite the detour for a simple bechamel, Regina remarked, crossing her arms. Perhaps trying to distract from the fundamentals. Dora smiled softly. The fundamentals are precisely why I'm doing this. Flavor foundations matter. She removed the infused milk from the heat, straining it with practiced efficiency. Her movements were economical, precise, nothing wasted, nothing showy. Just pure technique refined through thousands of repetitions. A young culinary student in the front row whispered to her neighbor, I've never seen milk strained like that before. So smooth. Regina caught the comment, her lips pressing into a thin line. Dora returned to her roux, which waited at the perfect temperature. As she began incorporating the infused milk, she maintained a consistent stirring pattern that professional chefs would recognize, a technique that prevented lumps while building silky texture. Note that I'm adding the milk gradually, Dora explained, her voice calm and instructional. This prevents shock to the roux and ensures proper emulsification. Several students began taking notes, their attention fully captured. Regina's expression darkened. A rather basic observation, Regina cut in. Perhaps we should move on to something more challenging. Dora nodded, unruffled. Of course. Regina gestured to a selection of ingredients at the neighboring station. Since you're clearly comfortable with basics, let's see you elevate this sauce. Create something worthy of a fine dining establishment. The challenge was clear. Regina was raising the stakes, expecting Dora to falter with more complex techniques. Dora surveyed the ingredients: black truffles, aged Parmigiano Reggiano, saffron, threads, lobster stock, and various molecular gastronomy elements, a test of both skill and creativity. Without hesitation, Dora selected the Parmigiano and a small amount of truffle. Less is more, her old mentoring chef used to say. She grated the aged cheese with expert precision, the movement so fluid it appeared effortless. The audience watched, transfixed, as she created a delicate infusion with the truffle, adding it to her bechamel with a technique that preserved the aroma while integrating the flavors completely. I'm keeping the integrity of the mother sauce, Dora explained, while enhancing it with complementary elements. The aroma wafting through the teaching kitchen was intoxicating. Several culinary students closed their eyes, inhaling appreciatively. Even Regina's assistant glanced longingly at the sauce. You're avoiding the molecular components, Regina pointed out sharply. Not familiar with modern techniques? Dora smiled. Sometimes classic execution speaks for itself. She picked up a spoon, dipped it into the sauce, and held it out toward Regina. Would you care to taste? It was a bold move, offering the master chef a taste of her own challenge. The room held its collective breath. Regina hesitated, then stepped forward, accepting the spoon with practiced dignity. Years of judging competitions had trained her to conceal her reactions, but even she couldn't hide the momentary widening of her eyes as the flavor registered. The sauce was perfect, not just technically sound, but transcendent. The kind of preparation that reminded trained palates why they'd fallen in love with cooking in the first place. Acceptable, Regina said stiffly, returning the spoon. But everyone had seen that moment of surprise, that flash of genuine appreciation before her professional mask slid back into place. From the third row, a middle-aged man in chef whites leaned forward, his brow furrowed in concentration as he studied Dora's technique. A flicker of recognition crossed his face. The way she rolls her wrist when stirring, he whispered to his colleague. I've only seen one chef do that before. Let's raise the stakes, Regina announced, recovering her composure. Anyone can prepare a single sauce with enough practice. True culinary excellence requires versatility. She gestured to her assistants, who wheeled in a cart loaded with mystery ingredients covered by silver domes, a standard challenge format from televised cooking competitions. Perhaps Ms. Morgan would like to prepare something more substantial. Regina's smile was razor thin, something that might actually challenge her home cooking skills. The implication was clear. Regina believed Dora's sauce was a fluke, a single, practiced party trick. Students shifted forward in their seats. The demonstration now transformed into unexpected entertainment. The middle-aged chef who had noticed Dora's technique pulled out his phone, discreetly typing something with rapid keystrokes. Dora maintained her composure as Regina dramatically removed the covers, revealing an assortment of ingredients: live, scallops still in their shells, exotic mushrooms, microgreens, and several components that would challenge even professional chefs. 20 minutes, Regina announced, setting the timer. Create a dish worthy of fine dining presentation. Dora surveyed the ingredients, mentally assessing combinations and techniques. Then, without fanfare, she began working. Her knife skills were immediately apparent. The precision, the speed, the consistency of each cut revealing years of professional expertise. She broke down the scallops with a technique rarely seen outside Japanese kitchens, preserving every usable element. The students watched, mesmerized, as Dora utilized cooking methods that weren't just advanced. They were innovative. She created a scallop mousse with unexpected flavor notes, utilizing a French technique that had fallen out of fashion decades ago, but was experiencing a renaissance in the world's top restaurants. Regina's triumphant expression gradually transformed into one of confusion, then concern. This woman wasn't just good, she was exceptional. Your knife work is quite precise, Regina commented, trying to maintain control of the situation. Where did you train? Dora smiled slightly as she continued working. Here and there. I've picked things up over the years. From the audience, the middle-aged chef stood suddenly, phone in hand. His voice carried across the room. That's why I recognized you, he called out, his tone filled with dawning realization. You're Dora Morgan. Dora's hands paused momentarily before continuing their work. The Dora Morgan, continued the chef, holding up his phone screen. 10-time international culinary champion, former executive chef at Soleil in Paris and Lumiere in New York. A wave of gasps and murmurs swept through the room. Students turned to each other in disbelief, some pulling out their own phones to confirm. The youngest chef ever to receive 3 Michelin stars, the man continued, his voice growing more confident. The Dora Morgan who disappeared from the culinary world at the height of her career. All eyes swung between Dora and the man making these extraordinary claims. Regina stood frozen, the color draining from her face as the implications sank in. Dora continued working, her focus unwavering as she plated her creation with artistic precision. Only when she set down her final garnish did she look up to face the room. I prefer just Dora now, she said quietly. The timer buzzed, 20 minutes exactly. Regina stared at the completed dish before her, a masterpiece of culinary art that would have been at home in any world-class restaurant. Then she looked at Dora, seeing her truly for the first time. You competed against me, Regina said slowly, memories surfacing. Vienna, 2014, the International Chef Challenge. Dora nodded once. You won, Regina continued, her voice hollow. You were wearing a hat that day. Your hair was different. It was. Dora Ag Morgan. The middle-aged chef stepped forward, his phone displaying an old article with a photo. A younger, Dora holding a trophy. surrounded by judges and competitors. Regina Montgomery stood in the background, her expression tight with disappointment. She didn't just win, the chef announced, turning to address the crowd. She set a scoring record that hasn't been broken since. The room erupted in commotion, students whispering excitedly, several taking photos, others frantically searching Dora's name online. The revelation rippled through the audience like wildfire. "But why are you here?" Regina asked, genuine bewilderment, breaking through her typically controlled demeanor. "Like this?" She gestured to Dora's simple clothing, her unassuming presence. Dora glanced at Brooke, who was watching with wide eyes and an expression of mingled shock and pride. "I came to support my niece," Dora said simply. "I didn't come to teach or compete. I came because someone I love wanted to learn." The honesty in her voice silenced the room once more. Even Regina seemed at a loss for words. "The culinary world has been searching for you for years," someone called from the back. Dora nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I know, but I found what I was searching for instead." The atmosphere in the teaching kitchen had transformed completely. Students who had barely noticed Dora earlier now gazed at her with undisguised awe. Some approached tentatively, phones in hand, hoping for a photo or autograph. Regina Montgomery stood by the demonstration table, her rigid posture betraying the internal struggle between professional pride and genuine respect. Finally, after a moment that seemed to stretch endlessly, she extended her hand to Dora. "Your technique is impeccable," Regina admitted, each word clearly costing her significant effort. "The industry has missed your influence." Dora accepted the handshake with grace. "Thank you, Chef Montgomery." One brave culinary student raised her hand. "Ms. Morgan, why did you leave? You were at the top of your game." The room grew quiet again, everyone leaning forward slightly, eager for the answer to the mystery that had puzzled the culinary world for years. Dora considered the question, her expression thoughtful. "I loved cooking," she said finally. "But I lost touch with why I started cooking in the first place. The competitions, the critics, the constant pressure to innovate. I found myself creating food to impress others rather than food that brought genuine joy." She gestured toward her completed dish still sitting on the demonstration table. "This is beautiful, technically perfect even. But the best meal I've made recently was a simple Sunday dinner with my family. No cameras, no critics, just food, made with love for people I care about." Her words resonated through the room, touching something universal among the aspiring chefs. Even Regina seemed affected, her usual stern expression softening almost imperceptibly. "Would you consider teaching occasionally?" Regina asked, surprising everyone, herself included, judging by her expression. "These students could learn a great deal from you." Dora looked around at the eager faces, then at her niece Brooke, who nodded encouragingly. "Perhaps," Dora said with a small smile. "On my terms this time." As the master class concluded, Dora Morgan slipped off her borrowed apron, once again becoming the unassuming woman who had walked in hours earlier. But something had changed. She carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had reclaimed a part of herself she'd set aside. True talent doesn't fade. It doesn't need constant validation or recognition to exist. Sometimes the most extraordinary people are those living ordinary lives, finding joy in simplicity until the moment they're called to shine.